Hey, Deserver listeners, I saved up all of your emails regarding the trial, and I thought I would read them all, the good ones, the bad ones, the critical ones, the other ones. And so let's get into it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and let's read an email. Annual upper tier patron, she says, an ER nurse on YouTube said the injuries do not match Heard's stories. My question is, aren't nuances in trauma stories something to consider, especially in cases like these? My experience was that I was hit by my father sometimes. Sorry to hear that. Sometimes the injuries were not so bad, but it was traumatic nonetheless and still an assault. Can't it be possible that the degree of the physical impact of the assaults were not horrific, but to Heard, these assaults were traumatic, and to her, she isn't dramatizing, but rather communicating her experience? Yeah, absolutely. I think I said as much, that it's quite possible that he did hit her, which of course the Johnny Depp people will hate me for even just saying that sentence, might have, and that she embellished, and that she actually was abused and traumatized by that. Yeah, 100%. But when she claims to have been beaten to unconsciousness a number of times, repeatedly punched in the face and thrown around, and then she says, and look at this, look at the evidence. And she has what doesn't look to be, as the ER nurse on YouTube apparently said, injuries that are commensurate with that claim. Not even close to it, from what I understand. Anyway, Elizabeth says, Dear Dr. Honda, I'm a Danish journalist with 2 decades of reporting, plus a master's in counseling psych. I wish I had gone to your university for counseling seriously. I've covered the Depp case too, and many other controversial political issues. I actually teach how to deal with attacks from the public. Insults almost never get under my skin. It's my piece that they go after, not me as a person. That's how I deal with it. I'm not sure how I learned to detach this way, and I'm a very sensitive person in private. Yeah, well, maybe I need to take your class, Elizabeth. And I will say that a part of me is starting to develop that, even kind of as I read these emails, because I think part of my problem was I feel so much distress, and the distress will last for hours, if not days, that I either don't actually face the negativity head on, or I face it just a little bit and it re-traumatizes me. Just using this as a jumping off point. So when we go through a trauma, say abuse, physical abuse when we're growing up, and we're traumatized by that and we have PTSD as a result, when we're an adult and we're trying to recover from those memories, we usually avoid. PTSD, a big part of it is avoiding, so we don't even want to think about it, and we avoid triggers that make us think about that abuse that went on. But occasionally something will sneak through, like a movie or your spouse being angry at you, and you experience all the distress and you try to get away as soon as you can. You might drink, you might avoid, you might whatever. And so you're either avoiding the trauma completely and processing the trauma completely, or it's invasive and spiking your distress, and then you run away. And the problem with that, of course, it makes sense that people do that, but when people go through trauma recovery, we want to not have either. We don't want complete avoidance, and we also don't want spikes. So we want a little bit, but to kind of sit with it and let your body get used to it. Get accustomed, because your neurology will eventually habituate to the stimulus, the memories of what happened, and over time there will be no distress from the stimulus anymore. It has to be done under strict monitoring, and there has to be a lot of prep work to that. Sometimes the prep work for me will, when I'm treating a client, will take years before we even go into what we call imaginal exposure, meaning exposing yourself to the trauma by imagining it, by telling the story. EMDR, exposure therapy, prolonged exposure, these kinds of therapies all operate from that science. And so for me, when I've either avoided the whole thing because it's so hard, or it'll sneak through like in the trial, and then I'm like, boom, with the stress. But by reading all these emails and going over it, I kind of feel my body being less triggered by it as I go along. And I think I might, at least temporarily, be more resilient about it and able to address it in a more helpful way to maybe these people. I don't know. Allison from Canada says, I think you are missing the point for Amber Heard. You have claimed that the main triggering factor in their fights are Amber's borderline personality disorder and her fear of abandonment. Yeah, so just chiming in here, I did say that a number of times. I don't know if that's true, but based on the audio recordings, there's a strong hypothesis that they might, say she didn't have any kind of borderline personality disorder or any kind of triggering around abandonment, then they would probably still have conflict, as every couple does, but I think a pretty big factor in the conflict and how it would become more severe was that he would distance himself either by substance use or emotionally distancing or something during moments or even during conflict. And then she would be very distressed, which is very natural for people going through borderline. And then that would cause a cascade of events that could absolutely result in Johnny Depp committing violent behavior or abusive behavior. I don't know. But it seemed to me like that would be, if I were to work with a couple that presented these details, that would be one of the first things that I would try to work on. It wouldn't mean I'd be blaming Amber for all the problems, but it would be one of the things that would be top on the priority list. I believe you are missing the point on Johnny Depp's deep-rooted misogyny and the impact it had on Amber, their relationship, and the cycle of abuse. Just chiming in here, yeah, I talked a little bit about that, particularly given what we heard in the texts, but maybe not enough. A few years ago, when I was at university, I dated a guy who was very much like Johnny Depp. At times, he was loving, caring, supportive, understanding. At other times, he was drunk, accusing me of cheating on him and insulting me in the presence of my friends, looking into my phone, etc. I am single now because I cannot find a man who can see me beneath the layers of my prettiness. The layers of my prettiness. I feel alone, and I feel so angry at this world. You have no idea. People think that my life is easy because I'm attractive. People think I am superficial and don't approach me during parties. I have thought about ending my life because I believe I will never be happy. Well, first off, Allison from Canada, I hope maybe you'll say that you're in therapy, that you're getting the support you need, because having those kinds of impulses are indicative of a lot of pain. And I don't doubt that you're going through that pain. The pain must be severe, and you deserve to have some soothing around that, some support around that to recover from that, to feel like people understand you. And it sounds like you might be isolated, which isn't good for you. You deserve to live. You deserve to be happy. You deserve support. You deserve acceptance. You deserve to be heard. So I hope that you can connect with a therapist that you feel is a good fit, that you can really, and maybe you are in therapy. I am convinced that Amber Heard has had the same treatment in her life, and possibly even worse given the fact that she is famous. I understand her hopes. I understand the delusion and rage when she realized he was a misogynist. So I think what she's saying is that that narrative that she provided, which I gave credence to, was that she was more submissive in the beginning, and then at some point she turned a corner and decided she wasn't going to take it anymore or something. And according to Allison, that turning point was, oh, I realize he's an abusive, jealous misogynist who wants to control women, and so I'm not going to take it anymore. People think that us attractive women are just greedy human beings using our bodies to get what we want in life. It's a curse to live as an attractive woman in this world. There is really deep sadness and rage living a life like this, and I can feel her rage on some of the recordings. Well, yeah, I'm sorry you're going through that. I don't want to discount the reasons why you feel this sadness and pain and rage, but it's possible that it's not necessarily entirely due to the fact that you're attractive. And I mean, I will say that attractive women will incur bullying and abuse from not only misogynists, but also from misogynists online, incels, MGTOW people. The narrative that they have, just go to the incel website, look at some quotes, don't, just take my word for it, that their philosophy, their propaganda is that women entirely, particularly like feminist women, but all women know, they wake up in the morning and know that they have power over men. And because of that, they use that power to oppress men, and they use that power to always keep them wanting and never giving them fully what they want, because they can, because they can do that to them, they do it, and all women are like this, and all women understand this, and all women are trying to get you. And feminism is what fuels it, because it gives women this power over their bodies. And every time I approach a beautiful woman and they shoot me down, they know what they're doing, like, it's just, wow, right? So those kind of fellas will absolutely attract a woman like you. They have names for women like you. I think they might even call them Stacy's or something, which is funny because my wife her name's Stacy. But yeah, so have you experienced that kind of abuse and crime, really? Yeah, I'm guessing that you have. Sounds like you have. But I'm guessing more importantly, though, you are isolated and you feel alone. So I hope that you can find a route to get to other people and not being isolated, not being alone. But yeah, perhaps I didn't emphasize my hypothesis that I did state at least a few times, but maybe I didn't emphasize it enough, that Johnny Depp might have misogynistic points of view, at least abusive, sexist points of view that would either be tamped down when he was sober or would kind of only emerge when he was highly intoxicated. I don't know. And that was expressed to the text, and that would explain some of her bruises and that kind of thing. We certainly saw a lot of jealousy from him. Now, of course, the previous emailer above said there's no way he was jealous, and that was all justified. Did I go over that? I feel like maybe I didn't go over that. It felt like that previous emailer was saying, maybe it was obvious, but the previous emailer was saying that Johnny Depp's jealousy was completely justified because Amber Heard. Anyway, so there's different points of view, obviously, in that topic, but the accounts of jealousy sounded very believable to me and were very concerning, and were at least in the broad category of abusive, in the way at least that Amber Heard was describing it, that she would feel like she couldn't be in the movies that she wanted to be. And now all those could be lies. Just want to say that. But yeah, maybe I didn't emphasize that enough, and maybe that's why people were hurt by me, which I could see. Anonymous patron says, I do appreciate all the work you put into this. It did help me view things more objectively. When I first started watching the trial, I thought Amber was mentally unstable and clearly the problem. But as I listened more, I heard Johnny Depp being a messed up drunk. I immediately was triggered to take Amber's side. I have personal experience with men drunk and on coke, and how awful that is, and how it changes a person. So then I was like, no, it's him. He's abusive. I've seen this. Whatever she is doing is justified. And I held that opinion for a short while. But because of your analysis, I eventually concluded that they are both very problematic people, both have suffered a lot to end up how they are, and both can afford excellent mental health care and should really do that seriously. Yeah. JP from Canada says, I just wanted to say thank you. You've helped me become aware and more empathetic to people's struggle and issues. Instead of demonizing Amber Heard, you show that one can have compassion for her struggles that cause the behavior. It's easy to jump on the hate bandwagon, but it takes some effort and cognizance to have that empathy. Again, thank you for sharing and educating. Oh, well, you're welcome, JP. Anonymous listener, she says, I am a psychological counselor here in Geneva, and I have greatly appreciated your videos. I quickly believed Ms. Heard's claims simply because she is a woman. It showed my biases, and it has been revealing to see how my thoughts changed as I watched the court case. I can say that you have opened a door of deep compassion to borderline and histrionic disorders, as well as addiction. Well, anonymous listener, I'm glad, because that is one of my missions, so thanks for that. Anonymous patron says, when Amber talks about blacking out after the head injuries, do we know that she's talking about unconsciousness, or it might be dissociation? I could also definitely see a situation where a person faints briefly or just decides to lay down a while because they got a minor concussion. Yeah, absolutely. If she actually did black out, it could absolutely have been dissociation, and it would fit with Dr. Hughes' contention that she had PTSD, and it also could be a result of a minor concussion, absolutely. But if that was her point, that isn't the way it came across. The way that it came across, and I don't remember everything, but it sounded like what she was saying was he beat her into unconsciousness 3 times. And one time she was clear that she said those previous 2 incidents where I was unconscious, I think it was because he was hitting me, but this time it definitely was because he was hitting me to unconsciousness. So, I mean, I could be remembering that wrong, but either way, if that was her point, more elaboration, or the attorney should have asked her more questions to bring that out or something, because that would have potentially been more convincing. Patron Tora from Sweden says, I really appreciate your coverage of the trial. I agree that Whitney's testimony seemed credible. However, her boss directly said that Whitney was lying about the staircase incident and that Amber was the one almost pushing her down the stairs, based on what Whitney told Howell. Secondly, the injuries the makeup artist testified about was after the incident where Johnny Depp headbutted her. His account was that they made the accidental content when he bear hugged her. Yeah, absolutely. Good points. Helen, they say, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your incredible empathy towards borderline individuals like myself. Thank you for making me feel less worthless. Don't ever lose sight of your strength, your empathy, and who you are. Thank you again. Well, Helen, I'm glad. Jamie from North Carolina, she says, narcissistic personality disorder is hard to spot and hard to diagnose. In public, they are not nasty and mean. In public, they are charismatic and charming. They do often end up dating and abusing people with borderline personality disorder. Does Johnny Depp have narcissistic personality disorder? Yeah, it's possible, but I didn't see any evidence. But who knows? I mean, we didn't have a lot of data on Johnny Depp, so anything's possible in my mind. The only evidence, so to speak, was put forth by Dr. Spiegel, and at least half of his data points were ridiculous. So, but that doesn't mean that Johnny Depp doesn't have narcissistic personality disorder, and I said that at the time. So it's possible. If there's any minor yellow flag of a personality issue for Johnny Depp, it's borderline, actually, because of the jealousy and the preoccupied attachment signs. There's not strong evidence of that, but if I were to start an investigation and he were to be honest with me and he were asking me to figure out what diagnosis applies to him, the first thing I would go towards, given what I know, is the jealousy and the borderline and the abandonment trauma that he might actually feel frequently, but mask with substance abuse. Hannah from Holidaysburg says, I know you've been getting a lot of abuse online, but I wanted to say, hearing you talk about it actually made me realize that I should be more empathetic towards people instead of just thinking of someone as a horrible person. Thank you for helping me with that. I'm starting to now, instead of judging someone off the bat, I take a more empathetic approach to people and my interactions with them. Well, great, Hannah. You're spreading the love. That's good. Robin from Australia, she says, I've been enjoying your YouTube videos, very balanced and informative. Below is a link to a YouTube short showing Amber Heard's fist while she's going to a fashion event. It's not proof of anything in a legal sense, but it has me wondering. Yeah, I looked at a lot of people sent me things like this, which was interesting. Yeah, it's, just food for thought. The picture was that she's at an event and it looks like there are some minor wounds on her fist, and people speculate that's because she was hitting Johnny Depp, but who knows. Anonymous listener, last email, they say, reading over the email I sent you, I wish I had the capacity to articulate my feelings and thoughts in a less triggered way and with more respect. So I think anonymous listener had sent a longer email, maybe even one of the ones I read above, I'm not sure. And so they're saying, reading over the email I sent you. So someone emailed me and I responded to the email. I don't know exactly what I said, but I was just like, oh, thanks for the feedback or something. And so they emailed this. Reading over the email I sent you, I wish I had the capacity to articulate my feelings and thoughts in a less triggered way and with more respect. I apologize for that. I really do. Well, I think I responded over email to this, but, that's great. We all get triggered. I think that's literally what I said. It's like, I've been there before. So apology accepted. And I hear you. So, yeah. But thanks for apologizing. We all do that. My wife does that to me. I do it to her. I've done it to Umberto. Umberto does it to me. You get triggered. You say it comes out badly. Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little unhinged. It happens. And, I've been there, and I want to have those interactions where we get real and then we take ownership for what we did that might have been wrong or something, So, it means a lot to me, really, because what that does for me, anonymous listener, when you sent that short email, is that when people are hurtful, I can imagine, well, maybe they're triggered. I actually did this to a podcast once years ago, and it still sticks in my mind because, well, I guess it really should stick in my mind because it might help me to understand when people are coming at me. But there was this moment I was listening to a podcast, and generally speaking, the podcast hosts are great, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're very nice, considerate people, but they said this one thing and it did trigger me. And I had never emailed, very rarely will I email a podcast or comment on a YouTube video, but I went straight to the computer and rattled off this email. And it was, I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure it was very unhinged and very hurtful and not great. And I'm shameful of it. I think about it every once, like, oh, why did I say it that way? Like, my God, grow up. And so, I mean, I must have apologized at some point because this happened, 10 years ago or something. But so, yeah, I can relate. And if you can apologize, then we're good. And that's always been my thing is, within reason, you can do whatever you want to me as long as you were triggered or something. And if you just apologize, be like, oh, I'm sorry yesterday. I'm good. We're good. Totally slate is clean. Like, because so few people actually apologize, And I've learned from my own life that, and my dad actually modeled this to me, that just apologize. You're thinking about something. And I mean, my dad, he kind of went through a phase of this years ago, but he still does this, but we'll have dinner or something and we'll have a long conversation. And then I'll get an email or text or call from him and be like, oh, that thing I said, I'm sorry. And my impression is that he's kind of mulling over the conversation. It's like, oh, why did I say that? And he doesn't stew on it. He doesn't make up excuses. He just shoots off a communication. Hey, sorry for saying that. And I try to do that. I try to be like my dad in that way. I try to just be like, oh, and just okay, immediately. And I'll text someone like right away, like, oh, sorry. The point is that if you apologize, and I hope that, and if there's anything I can apologize for, please give me that chance. And I feel like in this whole project of reading all these emails, I feel like there were a number of points where I felt like there was an opportunity for me to apologize, and I meant it. So yeah, okay, that's the end of that. I don't really want to answer any more emails about the trial, unless they're just notes like, hey, like this or whatever, because I'm still getting a lot of emails, or I was until today, about details, little like, oh, this evidence. And if you just want to share with me something, that's fine. But some people, they're really going after me. Some of the emails above, they're just like, let me tell you all the ways that you're wrong and just how stupid you were. I mean, literally someone was saying that previously. I'm not really interested in that, tell you the truth. I'm pretty burnt out on the trial, and I have been for a while. And I did this episode because it just didn't feel complete until I did this project where I really just went into all this stuff. And I'm a bit of a completist when it comes to reading everyone's emails on the air, which I've managed to do kind of for the most part since the beginning of the podcast 14 years ago. It was much easier before, but it's, I think still attainable. I don't know. We'll see. Point is that I'm a bit burned out, and which affects my overall energy level for this whole thing that I'm doing. I don't want whatever happened to me in the trial to somehow taint this whole podcast and YouTube channel, because I feel like we as a community have really built something that is mutually gratifying, for me and some other people. And so I don't want that to be threatened at all. And, some people have been worried because I did talk about like throwing in the towel and closing down the whole thing. And I'll tell you, those thoughts don't cross my mind. And the thoughts that did, it was pretty fleeting. I plan on doing this well past retirement. I'm getting to the age where retirement's the official age of retirement, like where I can start getting Social Security. It's not that far off for me in my life. The dog is barking. And I think, well, but as long as I can sit in this chair and talk into this microphone, I plan on doing this until I can't do that anymore. I could be 85 and still doing this, right? I mean, what's stopping me, really? So I don't have any plans to stop, and that's how I feel now, and I've felt that way for 14 years. I can't imagine that changing anytime soon. So know that, and also thanks everyone for the kindness and the grace that you have given me, and thank you to everyone who provided criticism in a nice enough tone. It's been quite a journey, y'all. I mean, if you're still watching this or listening to this, my goodness, what do you think about all this stuff? There's got to be something you think, right? I'm curious, genuinely. Like, I have a need to know. Again, as I keep saying it, and when I'm teaching or if I was in a small lecture hall, I would literally just go, what do you think about that? And then people would talk. My students talk a lot in my classes. There are classes where they're doing most of the talking. So I'm just like, what do you think? What do you think? And it feels unsatisfying not to know immediately. But, so hopefully I'll get some feedback from y'all about how you feel. But anyway. All right, y'all. End of a chapter. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.